Have you ever noticed what happens when someone who used to control you suddenly realizes they can't anymore? It's almost eerie. The silence feels different. Their words shift. The energy in the room changes, not because you did something wrong, but because you did something right. See, people who thrive on power, on getting inside your head, they don't handle loss very well, especially the loss of control. And when they finally see that you're not reacting, not bending, not feeding the drama anymore, that's when they panic. And that panic, that's when they try their last dirty trick. It's not the yelling, it's not the gaslighting, it's not the insults. You've already grown immune to those. No, this one's different. It's softer, quieter. It comes wrapped in concern, apology, or nostalgia. It sounds like love. They might say, I've been thinking a lot. Maybe I was too harsh. I just want to make things right. And for a second, just a second, you might feel that old pull again, because you're human, because you remember the good times, because you want to believe that people can change. But this isn't growth. This is strategy. They're not trying to heal. They're trying to reopen the wound. Because when a narcissist sees you as too strong, too aware, too independent, when they realize their old tactics don't work, they reach for the only weapon they have left, your empathy. And that is where the real battle begins. This isn't about who's right or wrong anymore. This is about who controls the narrative, who keeps their center when everything around them is designed to pull them off balance. So before we go any further, I want you to remember something. Power doesn't always look like domination. Sometimes power is silence. It's composure. It's refusing to dance when someone else starts the music. Because when they see you standing there, calm, grounded, unbothered, they'll realize something terrifying. They can't touch you anymore. They always seemed so confident, didn't they? That steady voice, that unwavering stare. The way they could twist any situation and make you question yourself, even your own reality. For a long time, it probably felt like they were untouchable, like nothing could shake their control. But that confidence was never real power. It was performance. It was illusion. And the moment you start to see that illusion for what it is, the whole thing begins to collapse. Control. That's their lifeblood. Everything they do, every word they choose, every silence they hold. It's all about maintaining control. Not just over you, but over how the world sees them. They build an identity so fragile that if you stop believing in it, it starts to crumble. So when you begin to rise, when you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop defending yourself, you threaten that identity at its core. You become a mirror that reflects their weakness, and that terrifies them. People like this don't fear being disliked. They fear being irrelevant. They fear becoming invisible. Because deep down they don't have an identity that can exist without an audience. Your attention is their oxygen. Your reactions, their anger, sadness, guilt, or confusion, those are their proof of existence. And when you withdraw that energy, they suffocate. That's when the fear sets in. But they'll never show it directly. You won't see them cry or admit they're scared. No, they'll mask it with arrogance, with sarcasm, with sudden bursts of fake indifference. You might hear them say, I don't care anymore, or you're nothing to me now. But if they truly didn't care, they wouldn't need to say it. They say it because they're trying to convince themselves it's true. Their entire strategy depends on predictability, on knowing how to push your buttons and make you respond. Once you stop responding, they lose the script. They're like an actor on stage who suddenly realizes the audience has left the theater. And without that audience, they don't know who to be. This is where it gets dangerous, because fear and loss of control can make anyone act out. But for a narcissist, it's existential. They start to scramble. They might lash out, trying to provoke you with insults or accusations. They might spread rumors, tell people you've changed, that you're cold, that you're cruel. That's the smear campaign. It's not just about hurting you. It's about regaining the control they've lost. If they can't control how you see yourself, they'll try to control how others see you. And here's the thing. They're not doing this consciously, like a criminal mastermind plotting every move. It's instinctive. It's survival. Their ego is fragile, but their defense mechanisms are strong. When they feel that loss of control, They go into psychological self-preservation. Every manipulative move you see, every guilt trip, every tear, every dramatic scene, it's an attempt to restore the power balance that used to keep them safe in their own mind. But this is also the moment where you start to see their truth. Because strength, real strength, doesn't panic when it loses control. It adapts. It observes. It learns. Weakness, on the other hand, scrambles. And when they scramble, you see the cracks. You start noticing how their stories don't add up, how they project their insecurities onto you, how they accuse you of things they secretly fear about themselves. And once you see that pattern, it's over. What terrifies them most isn't losing you. It's losing the version of you that believed in them. That version that apologized when they were wrong, that tried harder, that believed love meant sacrifice. Because if that version of you is gone, they can't manipulate what replaced it. They can't manipulate awareness. So when you start setting boundaries, when you say, I'm not having this conversation, or I won't be spoken to like that, they don't just hear rejection, they hear exposure. They realize you've seen behind the curtain, and they know that once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Here's what most people misunderstand. Narcissists don't fear losing you to someone else. They fear losing their grip on you. They don't want you happy somewhere else, not because they love you, but because your happiness elsewhere proves that their power was never real. It proves that the world didn't end when you stopped serving their ego. It proves that you can live, even thrive without them. And that's the one truth they can't handle. When a narcissist senses that truth, they enter what I call the control crisis. You'll see it in their behavior. One moment they're attacking, the next they're apologizing. One day they're cold and distant, the next they're reaching out, reminiscing about the good time. They'll say things like, remember when we were great together? Or I don't even recognize you anymore. That last one is especially revealing because they don't recognize you. You're no longer the person who fit inside their control. You've outgrown the cage they built for you. That's the fear. That's the loss. It's not about love. It's about access. They're losing access to your emotions, your time, your validation. And when they lose access, they lose their reflection. But here's the part you must understand. Their fear doesn't mean you've won yet. Because fear makes them unpredictable. It can make them dangerous in subtle ways. This is when they'll pull out the last dirty trick. The emotional ambush. They'll try to come across as humble, vulnerable, or regretful. They'll say all the words you once wanted to hear, hoping you'll step back inside the dynamic without realizing it. You have to stay grounded here. You have to remind yourself, just because someone is acting weak doesn't mean they've changed. Sometimes weakness is the final disguise. Sometimes it's just fear wearing a new mask. So when that moment comes, and it will, I want you to do something powerful. Don't react. Don't explain. Don't try to correct their version of the story. Just breathe. Observe. Because your silence is no longer weakness. It's data collection. It's power. And as you stand there, calm and unshaken, watching them scramble to regain what they've lost, they'll feel it, the shift. The control they once had over you doesn't exist anymore. Their words don't land. Their tricks don't work. Their fear grows, not because you've become cruel, but because you've become free. That's the moment their illusion ends. And your real power begins. They always save the best act for last. When the anger stops working, when the insults lose their sting, when you've stopped rising to every provocation, they switch roles. Suddenly, the villain becomes the victim. The person who once made you doubt yourself now looks at you with trembling eyes and says, I just don't know what happened between us. The tone is softer. The words sound almost tender. You want to believe that maybe, finally they've realized the damage they caused. You want to believe this is growth. But what you're seeing isn't an awakening. It's a tactic. It's the last dirty trick of control, emotional manipulation disguised as vulnerability. They understand something about you. They know you're not cold. They know you care, that you have empathy. That's why you were drawn to them in the first place. You saw potential, goodness, maybe even pain behind their arrogance. And that's exactly the part of you they learned to play. They know your compassion is a doorway. And now that every other door is closed, they're knocking on that one. They start with small gestures, a message that sounds thoughtful, a memory that tugs at your heart. Remember when we used to laugh until sunrise? They'll say, I miss that, I miss us. It sounds harmless, even sweet. But pay attention. That message isn't about reconnection. It's a hook. They're not remembering you. They're reminding you they want to reignite the emotional circuit that made you question your own boundaries. They're testing to see if you'll still respond. If they can get you to feel something, nostalgia, guilt, pity, they've reopened the game. People who manipulate like this are master storytellers. They don't rewrite history outright, they edit it. They leave out their cruelty and highlight your kindness. They'll say, I know I wasn't perfect, but you weren't easy either. Blurring the line between victim and perpetrator until you start wondering if maybe they're right. They'll talk about how much they've changed, how they've been in therapy, or how they finally understand. And maybe they have learned some vocabulary words like boundaries, accountability, growth, but they use them the way a magician uses smoke and mirrors. The words are there to distract you from the sleight of hand. Watch how they use timing. They never reach out when you're strong. They wait for a moment of vulnerability, when you're tired, lonely, or nostalgic. Maybe it's a holiday. Maybe you've had a hard week. They can sense it. They've studied your rhythms. That's when the message comes in, carefully crafted to sound sincere. You might even tell yourself it can't hurt to reply, but it can, because replying reopens the door. They've been trying to kick down for weeks. And once you open that door, they step right back in with their old confidence disguised as tenderness. You'll notice the shift almost immediately. The soft voice starts making demands again. Only this time in the language of care. I just need closure. I want to talk. Just once. I feel like you owe me that. They weaponize decency, turning your empathy into an obligation. You start to feel that familiar pressure to be polite, to explain, to give them one more chance to prove they've changed. But they haven't changed. They've adapted. They've realized that dominance won't get them what they want anymore. So now they're playing the role of the wounded soul. Here's the truth. People who genuinely feel remorse don't perform it. They live it. They accept the distance. They take accountability without demanding comfort. They respect your boundaries even if it hurts. The narcissist can't do that because their apology isn't about your healing. It's about regaining their comfort. They don't want forgiveness. They want access. They want to know they can still reach you. That's their reassurance that the power imbalance isn't gone. It's just dormant. This stage can be the hardest for you because it triggers the side of you that still hopes. You remember the moments that felt real. You want to believe people can change. And you can almost hear the voice in your head saying, maybe this time will be different. That's not weakness. That's empathy. But empathy without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. Every time you entertain their performance, you teach them that your heart is still negotiable. You'll see them switch emotions rapidly, tears, silence, sudden laughter, a memory, a guilt trip. It's emotional whiplash. One moment they're humble, the next they're subtly accusing, I guess I just wasn't enough for you. That line isn't vulnerability, it's bait. It's meant to make you defend yourself, to rush in and reassure them, to say, no, that's not true. And the moment you do, they've regained control of the conversation. They're back in your head, pulling the same strings, only with softer hands. Sometimes they'll use pain as proof. They'll show you how much they're suffering, how broken they are without you. They'll tell stories about how they can't eat, can't sleep, can't stop thinking about you. And maybe they can't, for now. But it's not love they're feeling, it's withdrawal. They're addicted to the validation you gave them. And this is the crash. And like any addict, they'll say whatever they need to say to get another fix. That's why the best thing you can do isn't to argue or expose them. It's to stay still. Don't match their emotion. Don't try to analyze their words. Just observe. If what they say is real, it will hold up over time. But it won't. Because manipulation can't sustain itself without your participation. When they realize you're not reacting, when they see that their tears, their charm, their nostalgia have no effect, they'll drop the act. Sometimes abruptly, sometimes with rage, because what they wanted wasn't reconciliation, it was reassurance that they still mattered. And that's where your power is proven. Not in how loudly you reject them, but in how calmly you refuse the performance. When you can hear them cry without moving closer, when you can see their name appear on your phone and feel nothing but quiet clarity, that's freedom. That's the moment you understand that compassion doesn't mean contact. You can care about someone's pain without letting them use it to harm you. Eventually they'll retreat, they'll tell people you're heartless, that you changed, that you were never who they thought you were. Let them. Every lie they tell only exposes how little control they have left. Because the truth isn't in what they say, it's in what you no longer feel. They wanted you to see their vulnerability and mistake it for love. But now you can see the difference. Love doesn't need to perform. Love doesn't beg for attention or twist your empathy into chains. Real vulnerability is quiet. It's consistent. It's followed by changed behavior. What they offered was theater, and you've walked out of the show. So when they come with the trembling voice and the soft eyes, when they say they've changed and all they want is one more chance, pause, breathe, look at them, not with anger but with truth. Because what you're seeing isn't transformation. It's desperation. They're not asking for your heart. They're asking for your energy. And now you finally know that your energy is yours to keep. They never stop testing you. That's what you have to understand. Even when you think it's over, when the phone has been silent, when the messages stop coming, when life starts to feel normal again, they're still watching. Not always literally, but energetically. They want to know if you're still theirs in some invisible way. If they can still get a reaction, if the version of you they used to control still exists beneath the stronger one you've become. When a narcissist senses that they're losing their grip completely, they don't always attack outright. They test subtly, strategically, with a precision that would almost impress you if it weren't so insidious. They'll throw small hooks into the water, tiny emotional lures meant to see if you'll bite. Because to them, your silence is intolerable. It's not just rejection, it's proof that they no longer have influence. And for someone who thrives on power, influence is everything. The first test usually comes as something seemingly harmless. A comment on social media, a random, "Hey, how have you been?" text, or even a message meant to sound like it went to the wrong person. They'll pretend it's accidental, but it's not. It's bait. They want to see if they still live rent-free in your mind. If you reply even just to say, "Please don't contact me," you've given them what they want. Confirmation that they still affect you, that you're still aware of them. If that doesn't work, they escalate the test. They'll reach out through someone else, maybe a mutual friend, maybe a family member. You'll hear, "They've been asking about you," or "They said they hope you're okay." It sounds like concern, but it's not about you. It's about measuring how much space they still occupy in your world. Will you ask about them? Will you react? Will you care? Every move you make gives them data. And if you don't respond to any of it, if you truly stay detached, they begin to panic in quieter ways. They'll start telling stories about you, subtly discrediting you to others. Not because they want to destroy your reputation, but because they're desperate to rewrite the narrative before you do. They want people to see you as unstable, unkind, or different. Because if others question your strength, maybe you'll start to question it too. That's another test. How solid are you in your truth when someone tries to rewrite your story? The cruel part is how they use empathy against you during these final tests. They might reach out saying they're struggling financially, emotionally, physically. They'll drop just enough information to trigger your instinct to help. You'll hear things like, "I've been sick," or "I've been going through a rough time." And because you're human, your mind flashes to the past, to the times when you cared for them, when your compassion felt like your strength. But this isn't about compassion. It's about compliance. They're not asking for help. They're testing if your boundaries are real or conditional. They'll also test your anger. Maybe they'll bring up something that used to hurt you, something they know could spark an emotional reaction. They might mock your growth or undermine your peace. They'll say things like, "Oh, look who thinks they're so strong now," or "You've changed, you're so cold." Those words are designed to sting because they target your self-image. They know that if they can provoke you into defending yourself, even for a moment, they've reopened communication. They've gotten you to re-enter their arena, even if only to argue. But here's the reality. You don't owe them that argument. You don't owe them proof of who you've become. Every time they test you, they're really asking one question: can I still control how you feel? And your job isn't to answer, it's to show through your stillness that the test no longer matters. There's a concept in interrogation psychology called the stress test. It's used to see how someone reacts under pressure. Narcissists do their own version of that. They apply small amounts of emotional pressure to see if you'll crack. They're not looking for love or forgiveness, they're looking for weakness. And every time you hold your ground, every time you respond with nothing more than calm silence, you're teaching them that their tactics no longer have an effect. That's what strength really is. Not loud resistance, but quiet certainty. You'll notice the tests shift tone when they realize their usual tactics don't work. They'll move from guilt to nostalgia, from charm to pity, from flattery to anger. It's all part of the same cycle. They're trying to find the right emotional key to unlock the old version of you, but you're not that person anymore. You've seen behind the curtain. You know that love isn't supposed to feel like walking on eggshells. You know that peace doesn't come from pleasing someone who's never satisfied. There's something deeply unsettling to a narcissist about calm strength. They're used to chaos. They feed on reaction. When you no longer participate, you remove their fuel. That's why these final tests can feel so bizarre. One day they'll act like you never existed. The next they'll try to resurrect every memory you shared. It's not love, it's desperation disguised as devotion. They might even say they respect your boundaries, only to violate them a moment later. They'll say, "I understand you need space," and then text you 2 hours later just to check in. That contradiction isn't accidental, it's a test of consistency. They want to know if you mean what you say. Because in their world, boundaries are flexible. They assume everyone has a price, a weakness, a breaking point. They're trying to find yours. When that happens, remember, you don't have to explain your silence. You don't need to justify your peace. The strongest message you'll ever send is the one you deliver without words. It's in the life you build that no longer includes them. It's in the steady energy they can no longer shake. Every unanswered call, every deleted message, every quiet choice to stay centered. Those are your victories. Eventually the testing will stop. Not because they've given up on you entirely, but because they've finally realized you're no longer a source of supply. They'll move on, looking for someone new to mirror back the power they can't create within themselves. And you'll be tempted to interpret their silence as closure. But closure doesn't come from them. It comes from knowing you passed every test they gave you without losing your integrity. When they tried to make you angry, you stayed calm. When they tried to make you feel guilty, you stayed grounded. When they tried to make you doubt yourself, you trusted your truth. That's how you win, not by proving them wrong, but by proving to yourself that you no longer need their validation. In the end, the tests were never really about them. They were about you, about showing you what you're capable of when you stop letting someone else define your worth. And once you understand that, the tests no longer scare you. They don't even surprise you, because now you know when someone tries to measure your strength, it's only because they've already felt it. Power doesn't always look like what we were taught. It isn't about standing over someone and proving that you're right. It isn't about revenge or making them feel the same pain they caused you. Real power is quieter. It's the way you carry yourself when no one's watching. It's the decision to rise without the need to be seen. It's when you realize that you don't need closure, explanation, or validation to move forward. You just need peace, and peace doesn't come from fighting fire with fire. It comes from putting the match down altogether. When you've been manipulated, lied to, and emotionally drained, the desire for revenge is natural. It's the mind's way of seeking balance, justice. You want them to see what they've done. You want them to hurt the way you did. But here's the truth. Revenge keeps you tied to them. It keeps you dancing to the rhythm they created. Because as long as your energy revolves around what they deserve, they still occupy space in your life. They still control your focus. That's not justice. That's continued captivity. Reclaiming your power begins the moment you shift your attention away from them and back to yourself. It starts with one simple, radical act: detachment. Not apathy, not coldness, detachment. Detachment means you stop reacting to their chaos. You stop explaining, defending, or trying to be understood. You stop chasing their acknowledgement. You understand that they are who they are, and no amount of reasoning or proof will change that. The most powerful sentence you can say in that moment is, "I see it for what it is." Because once you see the game clearly, you no longer have to play it. In the early stages of detachment, your mind will still crave the old dynamic. It will look for the familiar tension, the emotional highs and lows. You'll catch yourself replaying arguments, imagining comebacks, thinking of what you should have said. That's normal. The body doesn't detox from emotional addiction overnight. But every time you resist the urge to engage, every time you choose silence instead of response, you're rewiring your nervous system for peace. You're teaching your mind that stability is not boring. It's safe. One of the hardest parts of reclaiming your power is accepting that they may never understand what they did. You won't get the apology that feels fair. You won't get the moment where they finally say, "You were right," because that would require accountability. And accountability threatens their entire self-image. You have to be okay with not getting that closure. Instead, you create your own. You close the door not because the story is finished, but because you're done living in it. And that's what they can't stand. The idea that you can walk away without bitterness. They want you angry, emotional, reactive, because that keeps them relevant. When you refuse to engage, when you become calm and steady, they lose access. They can't provoke you. They can't pull you back, and that's the real punishment. They expected a war. Instead, you gave them silence. But let's be clear. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means control. It's choosing your battles and realizing most of them aren't worth fighting. It's refusing to give your energy to people who thrive on conflict. Silence is power when it's intentional. It says, "I'm not available for your chaos anymore." And when you hold that energy long enough, they feel it. They sense that shift. The hooks they used to pull you in no longer find purchase. That's when you know you've reclaimed yourself. Reclaiming power without revenge also means forgiving yourself for what you tolerated, for what you didn't know, for how long it took you to leave. You have to release the shame. Shame keeps you connected to their narrative. It whispers, "You should have known better," but the truth is, you couldn't have known. You were operating with the information and emotional capacity you had at the time. Forgiving yourself is how you cut the last thread that ties you to the past, because when you carry guilt, you carry their voice, and your voice deserves to be louder now. So how do you rebuild after that? You rebuild by focusing on power that can't be taken. Inner power. You start small, getting back into routines, taking care of your body, surrounding yourself with people who don't make you question your worth. You start reclaiming your space, physically, mentally, emotionally. You stop explaining why you need distance. You stop apologizing for peace. Every boundary you hold is an act of self-respect. Every no that replaces an old yes is a declaration of freedom. There will be moments when they try to return, or when you hear about them and feel that familiar surge of anger or sadness. That's okay. Healing isn't about never feeling anything again. It's about not letting those feelings control your direction. When that wave hits, pause, breathe. Remind yourself that your reaction is the last currency they ever had, and you don't owe anyone a single cent more of your peace. Sometimes people ask, but how will they learn if I don't show them how they hurt me? They won't, and they don't need to. The purpose of your healing isn't to educate the person who broke you. It's to evolve beyond needing their acknowledgement. They will learn from life, from time, or maybe not at all. But that's not your job. Your job is to live well, to build a life so solid that their memory no longer rattles its foundation. Reclaiming power without revenge is also about transforming pain into purpose. You take what happened and use it to understand yourself better. You learn your patterns, your triggers, your strengths. You realize that every time you broke, you also rebuilt stronger. The goal isn't to become hard or guarded. It's to become discerning. You learn to see manipulation before it touches you. You learn to recognize peace, not as a reward, but as your baseline. Eventually, you stop thinking about how to win. You understand that you already have. Winning was never about being above them. It was about being beyond them. It's waking up one morning and realizing that they haven't crossed your mind in weeks. It's laughing without the weight in your chest. It's standing in front of the mirror and seeing your reflection, not the one they distorted, but the one that was always there underneath. That's what power looks like. It's quiet. It's steady. It's you, unbothered, unchained, and unapologetically at peace. You don't need revenge because you don't live in the same world they do anymore. You're operating on a higher frequency, one where drama can't breathe. You've stopped matching their energy and started protecting your own. And maybe one day they'll see you, really see you, not the version they could manipulate, but the person who outgrew them completely. And they'll feel that sting, that realization that their greatest weapon no longer works on you. That is your victory. That's the moment you understand the most powerful revenge there ever was. Not to destroy them, but to become untouchable. Becoming untouchable isn't about building walls so high that no one can reach you. It's about creating a foundation so strong that no one can shake you. It's not coldness, it's clarity. It's the calm that comes when you no longer fear losing people. Because you finally understand that losing someone who hurts your peace isn't a loss. It's a release. It's what happens when you move from surviving to leading your own life, from reacting to choosing, from explaining to simply existing in your truth. At first, it won't feel like power. It will feel like emptiness. After you walk away from toxicity, there's a strange silence. The constant noise, the tension, the arguments, the confusion is gone. Your mind, once trained to anticipate chaos, now struggles to adjust to calm. You might even mistake peace for boredom, or stillness for loneliness. That's normal. You've been conditioned to associate intensity with connection. But untouchable people know that peace isn't the absence of emotion. It's the presence of control. It's learning to be still without being scared of your own thoughts. In the beginning, becoming untouchable is messy. You'll catch yourself reaching for old habits, checking if they've called, wondering what they think, replaying conversations in your mind. That's the residue of attachment, not weakness. Don't judge yourself for it. Healing isn't about perfection. It's about awareness. Every time you notice those patterns and choose not to act on them, you're strengthening new neural pathways. You're teaching your mind that safety doesn't depend on their approval anymore. Then something subtle starts to shift. You begin to reclaim your focus. The energy that once went into analyzing someone else's moods starts to flow back into your own life. You invest in your growth, your body, your creativity. You start saying no to things that drain you, even if it makes people uncomfortable. You stop apologizing for your boundaries, for your silence, for needing space. You realize that your energy is your currency, and not everyone deserves access to it. That's when the transformation begins. Becoming untouchable means understanding your worth without needing it. Confirmed. It's knowing that attention isn't affection, and that love without respect isn't love at all. It's realizing that someone's inability to see your value doesn't make you less valuable. You stop trying to prove your goodness to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop chasing closure from those who never offered clarity. You stop fighting battles that cost you your peace. You'll notice the world around you reacts differently when you reach this stage. People who used to manipulate you will sense they've lost their grip. They might try to test your boundaries again, but this time, you won't even flinch. Their tactics, once powerful, now seem almost transparent. You can see through the emotional bait, the guilt trips, the false vulnerability. You don't need to call it out. You simply disengage. That's the highest level of power. You don't have to expose the game because you've already stopped playing. Being untouchable doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you feel deeply, but selectively. You become intentional about where your energy goes. You love, but you don't chase. You care, but you don't cling. You give, but you don't overextend. You understand that empathy without discernment is self-destruction. You can see someone in pain and still know it's not your job to fix them. You can wish them healing without inviting their chaos back into your life. When you reach this point, your silence becomes your statement. People who once thrived on your reaction will find nothing to feed on. They'll project, provoke, or even praise you just to get something out of you. But you'll meet it all with the same calm neutrality, because untouchable people don't swing between extremes. They stay centered. They understand that control isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the unshakable inner voice that says, I know who I am and I'm not moving from this truth. The new you is grounded. You no longer need validation to feel seen. You no longer confuse chaos for passion or attention for affection. You trust your instincts again. You start to see red flags not as invitations to heal someone, but as warnings to protect yourself. You stop internalizing other people's pain as your responsibility. And for the first time, you feel safe in your own company. This version of you doesn't seek revenge because there's nothing left to prove. You're not interested in who's talking about you, who's watching you, or who's trying to come back. You've outgrown the need for noise. You've learned that real confidence isn't about having control over others. It's about having control over yourself. The new you doesn't waste energy explaining your worth. You embody it, and that quiet self-assurance is what makes you untouchable. Eventually, you'll start to attract differently. Peaceful people will gravitate toward you because your calm feels like safety. Opportunists will back away because your boundaries feel like barriers. You'll find that you no longer tolerate the things you once did, not out of bitterness, but out of alignment. You've raised your standard not just for others, but for yourself. You treat yourself with the kind of respect you used to beg others for. You no longer chase love. You cultivate it. And maybe one day you'll look back at the version of yourself that once tolerated the manipulation, the disrespect, the games. You'll feel compassion for that person, not shame, because they were the one who started this journey. They were the one who decided that enough was enough. That version of you survived, so this version could thrive. So you don't erase them, you honor them. You thank them for their endurance. Becoming untouchable doesn't make you superior. It makes you sovereign. It means you've reclaimed ownership of your emotions, your focus, your narrative. No one dictates your self-worth anymore. No one's approval determines your peace. You're free, and freedom isn't loud. It's steady. It's walking through life knowing that no matter what someone throws your way, you can handle it without losing yourself. So the next time someone tries to test you, provoke you, or pull you back into the chaos, remember this: you've already passed every test that mattered. You don't need to prove your strength by fighting battles that aren't yours. The new you doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't break. You observe, you decide, you move forward. And as you do, you'll notice something powerful. People can sense it. They'll feel your energy shift before you even speak. They'll know instinctively that they can't manipulate what they can't move. That's what untouchable means. It's not about building armor. It's about becoming so grounded in your truth that no storm can uproot you. You've evolved from survival to mastery, from being controlled to being calm, from reacting to leading. That's the new you, the one who doesn't just survive the storm, but becomes the calm within it. At some point, the noise fades, the battle stops, and you finally understand why everything happened the way it did. It wasn't to break you, it was to rebuild you. Every manipulation, every heartbreak, every moment you doubted your own worth, it all served one purpose: to wake you up to the truth of who you are. You were never powerless. You were just unaware of your power. The people who tried to control you never feared your weakness. They feared your potential. They saw the strength you hadn't yet seen in yourself. And that's why they fought so hard to keep you small. But you outgrew their illusion. You learned that peace isn't something someone gives you, it's something you protect. You realize that silence can be louder than any argument, and indifference can be the sharpest boundary of all. Now you walk differently. You speak differently. You choose differently. Because you finally understand that freedom isn't about getting revenge, it's about getting back to yourself. The self that doesn't shrink for anyone. The self that stands tall even when no one's watching. The self that knows that healing isn't about forgetting what happened, it's about remembering who you were before the pain. And choosing to return there. Stronger, wiser, untouchable. So let them wonder, let them talk. Let them spin their stories, because you no longer live in their world. You've built your own. A world where your energy is sacred, your boundaries are firm, and your peace is non-negotiable. You don't need to prove that you've won. You don't need to make anyone see your worth. The fact that you rose from what was meant to destroy you is proof enough. Remember this, when a narcissist can no longer control you, they'll try to control how others see you. Don't react. Keep walking. The truth doesn't need defense. Time will do that for you. Your power isn't in what you fight. It's in what you no longer give your energy to. That's how you become truly untouchable. Not by standing on top of others, but by standing fully in yourself. Walk forward with your head high, your heart steady, and your spirit unbreakable. You've already done the hardest part. You found yourself again. And that is the kind of victory no one can ever take from you.